Welcome to Catholic Party for America, and today we're going to be covering a few topics that government should reflect the people. We'll be talking on veterans, immigration, policy toward Latin America, healthcare, and the JFK and his brother's assassination, and why we should be concerned if we are Catholics going into politics. And we welcome Brother Alexis to the program.
Hey, Jay, and thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be on with Catholic Party for America and discussing these most important issues that you're not going to hear from anyone else. And I encourage all the listeners to share this program with fellow Catholics, because for 200 years in the United States, we have been deprived of the proper catechetical instruction on how to serve Jesus Christ with our vote and our political life. We have been presented a false form of Catholicism, as if being Catholic is something that takes place in your house and in the church, and you forget about Jesus Christ in the public forum. And so it's an honor to be here and a pleasure.
Yeah. So when we do our programs for Ordo Militaris Radio, we've taken the research done by others, mostly Anthony Sutton. Now this Paul L. Williams writer in Operation Gladio. We have learned that our government does not reflect the people. Instead, it goes after the people and sometimes kills them.
Yeah, it's really sad, but to find out these things about the United States, especially the role of the CIA, Skull and Bones Lodge, and the absolute total corruption of the Democrat and Republican parties. It's pretty clear that they've been playing us a long time. And while they constantly echo the slogans of land of the brave, home of the free, we are really one of the most psychologically and ideologically controlled nations, and completely duped. And they don't allow anyone to come to power unless they're people who are going to dupe us, whether in the media or in the church. And I can't say I know one priest in the United States who's going to speak the truth about this. Who wouldn't, and if they did, they'd probably have their faculties pulled. And even organizations that come from overseas to the United States, they don't talk about this. So we're going to hear it only on Catholic Party for America. Yeah. Because if the government doesn't reflect our views, then it's not a democracy. And if it's not a democracy, why do we sit around and not work to overthrow it? So, but we should make it a government that reflects the people. And these crazy decisions coming out of the Supreme Court that no one agrees with are just evident sign that this is not a government of the people, by the people, or for the people.
Yeah. And we were preparing to do the show a few hours ago. I was just reading through Operation Gladio, and history we don't hear about in our schools or even in our news about what our government is doing to help train, sponsor the enemy of the United States who want to kill us.
Yeah, it was very enlightening when you shared that news about how the CIA, way back in the 80s, started bringing over radical Islamic preachers, infiltrating the black mosques in the United States, and hoodwinking young black men to go overseas and fight for the CIA under the banners of jihadi organization, so they could cover what the CIA was doing.
Mm-hmm. And there are those that people may know, recognize the names, but not their actual names. It was this movement to make these African Americans Muslim, or by these fellows Timothy Drew, who changed his name to Noble Drew Ali, Elijah Poole, who became Elijah Muhammad, and Malcolm Little, or as they call him, Malcolm X. And it was through these guys who brought the Islamic religion to the African American communities. You didn't see churches rise up for Christianity, but you saw mosques rise up in these black neighborhoods. Then you start seeing today, you see these Black Lives Matter folks go around saying they're Islamic. Well, where'd that come from? Who got that there to them? It turns out it was in 1980, as Brother Alexis said, the CIA began to send hundreds of militant Muslim missionaries, all members of the radical Tablighi Jamaat, into American mosques to call on young black men to take up arms in holy war to liberate their Muslim brothers. It was Sheikh Mubarak Gilani, one of the first of these missionaries to arrive, convinced scores of members of the Yazid Mosque in Brooklyn to head off to guerrilla training camps in Pakistan with an offer of thousands in cash and the promise of 70 Huris in the seventh heaven if they were killed in action. The cash came from the CIA.
Yeah, now if you don't believe the CIA was behind this and that they could have been controlling all these groups, so just give you a counterexample. Order Militaris Catholicus. We started 4 years ago. We called on Catholic men to organize to help defend Christians against terrorism in the Mideast. And boy, we must have had 60, 90 government agents on our back.
Mm-hmm.
I was coming back from praying for Catholics who were killed at a terrorist attack in Japan through the airport of LA. And I didn't commit anything illegal, and 6, 8 agents, border agents on my back, twisting my arms and beating me up. They did that because that was the way the deep state saying, we don't like what you guys are doing. And so there's no way these promoters of terrorism can come in and preach and recruit and fund and then ship people and arms back to the Mideast if the CIA wasn't behind it and giving them all the passports, permissions, and telling all the other police agencies to look the other way. It was impossible. Mm-hmm. And so this is a case in point that the American government is not American. It is the enemy of humanity, and it is the enemy of the American people. And when I mean American government, I don't mean the form of our government. I mean the Masons who are in control of our government through the Democrat and Republican Party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can see that in how a large number, most of Americans are Christian. But when you look at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, whatever, who do their fancy talks in Florida or wherever, it was revealed that they are backed by the LGBT lobby and do not promote the family union, traditional families. And so you have them literally sponsoring terrorists in the Mideast, training them, but not training them over there. Training them here in our own backyards. Then we also have them sponsoring things that are against Christianity and also saying you cannot speak bad about Israel or you're anti-Semitic. And then they go on to say anti-Semitism is anti-Americanism. It's just like, Yeah.
I can see why many Catholics don't vote, but these are just more evidence to show that you're throwing your vote away if you vote Democrat or Republican, because both of them are just a manipulation. And there is such a deep level of manipulation that when we began Ordo Militaris 4 years ago, I had a lot of government agents call me thinking that we were a CIA op, and they were trying to find out who we were under, and they were feeling us out. They didn't come out openly and say it, but they did it indirectly because they just assumed that if we're using the Cross of Malta, we're a CIA op. That's how deeply infiltrated. And we see with all the Catholic media talking heads, they're like this with the deep state narrative. You must vote for Trump. It's a mortal sin. But as soon as Biden gets inaugurated, Biden's the president. There's like no independent thought there. Or just like Taylor Marshall yesterday, he saw that a poll showed that most Catholics believe Benedict's the Pope. He said the poll was a mess. A mess. Is that an American? Is that even Catholic? Was that even American? An American would say, if Trump gets 60%, that's what the people want. If Benedict gets 60%, isn't that what the people want? Okay. But this is not the only thing. There's things been going on in the United States for the last century that are obviously un-American. Okay. We have the massive federal deficit, and that money is going overseas or going to the military industrial establishment to keep constant, useless wars going. America up to 2021 would have to be described as the most stupid empire in the history of the world that's gone 20 trillion into debt without conquering any territory. The normal, sane Catholic view of political power is if you're going to spend money to fight a war, you conquer territory. You put it under your control. So if America is doing all these wars and the American government doesn't get control of it, who's getting control? The Masonic Lodge is who's getting control. And Gladio is a perfect operation of that. We were told that America liberated Europe, but what really happened in the post-war period is the Masonic Lodge got complete control of Europe.
Yeah. So, as we can see through these examples, all documented, we covered them in hour, 2 hour long programs each time with documents, well researched, that our government does not reflect the people. There was a time and place that it did for, what was it, 2 years?
And if you want a government that reflects the values of the people, you need a party that's not controlled by the lodge, okay? And you need to wake up and unplug from the propaganda. You have to realize you've been lied to your whole life. And the entire American culture is a big lie to conceal it, the fact from you, to dangle things in front of your eye to keep you constantly distracted, to convince you to do the most stupid things, like vote for parties that win the election but then concede.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. Vote for a party that puts people in the Supreme Court that approves of gay marriage. So, and if you don't, it's a mortal sin. Well, that's absolutely blasphemous heresy to say it's a mortal sin not to vote for a party that promotes gay marriage. I'd like Taylor Marshall to explain that to me. I'd like LifeSite News to explain that to me. I'd like Steve Skojec to explain that to me. I'd like Michael Matt and Chris Farrar explain that to me. I'd like all the talking heads in the United States and the so-called Catholic media explain that to me. Tim Gordon, can you explain that to me? These are all the same voices who have never told you to start a Catholic party and who have known about the Catholic Party for a month and haven't told you a word about it. And now you know why, because you know that what they want you to do in the public forum is, I don't think, what Christ would want you to do. I think you should raise the standard of Christ.
Yeah.
And not just call yourself the Crusader channel.
If you're going to say we should either surrender and succeed from remove ourselves from the Union, our states from the Union, or we should set up our own tiny little republics, as Mike Church would call his little plot of land where he lives, his little republic, and not do anything but stay in the Republican Party and keep voting and do nothings and the same type of people over and over. That is surrendering to the enemy. I get it. They want freedom back, but if they truly want freedom back, you don't hurt all the other 49 states if you leave. You work to fight to save and restore all 50 states. You don't just run off and hide.
Yeah, and how many have been saying to run off and hide and do nothing? We hear it from Mr. Parrott out of Kansas City. We've heard it from Mr. Hirsch out of Oklahoma. We have this so-called secessionists. But let's look at a comparison. Good Catholics agree you shouldn't take a vaccine that's made from aborted tissues or using aborted children, because that is participation, even if it's distant, in a heinous moral act. But if you vote a party that puts people in the Supreme Court that approves of gay marriage, that is also remote participation in a heinous moral act.
Mm-hmm.
So why is one thing a mortal sin, but the other thing is a virtue?
Yeah.
See, we have to be consistent as Catholics, or we're betraying Jesus Christ. You don't get to heaven by being 99% faithful.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be 100%. God doesn't play these kind of games, and you shouldn't listen to people. We see this in how they treat veterans. The way the American government treats veterans is horrendous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have, my guess, a few 100,000 or so veterans who are on the streets, homeless, without jobs, without proper care. Then we also have, still horrible doctors, nurses, staff at the Veterans Administration hospitals. And still horrible wait times for just a normal checkup, which then turns out to be someone they need surgeries, or it's even worse. Then look at Michigan's National Guard. What were they given? They were given food with either iron shavings in it, glass in it, nails in it, or it was raw. Now, those who procure the food for the National Guard, I believe, is those who run the states, who are put in charge of the National Guard for the states. And it got me thinking and going back to reading this. Let's see if I can get this up here. Little book by Joseph Plum Martin, a soldier from the American Revolution in New York. I thought, surely our government took better care of our veterans. And to start, it was worse. They didn't get food. And it was the Congress who was supposed to procure the food, the supplies needed to keep the army fed and healthy. Joseph Plum Martin, while they were on retreat trying to keep Washington safe, they had to stop for the night, and they were digging trenches. The ground was like a sponge, full of water, and they had no food on them, no water. To either get food or water, you had to go to a farm and ask for it. That would mean usually doing some help for the farmer, or the farmer, if he was in favor of the American Revolution, would allow you to take what you needed. But there were also cases where you had to steal, and sometimes the meat that you were given, what was supposed to be pork or beef, was not pork or beef. He would not describe the meat that he was given at the hospital by a friend. He said it was not pork or beef. And at the time, there was only two other animals in the area: horses or dogs.
One of the signs of a revolution that is ideological and exploits people is that when the poor sacrifice themselves to win a revolution, they don't get cared for, they get discarded. We see this in the United States. We are told that it's to preserve democracy that the military is weak and people don't serve for long terms because we don't want a military class that could overthrow the government. What they're really saying is we don't want a military that can overthrow the lodge.
Mm-hmm.
Because the military, since it recruits from the common man, generally has more people that are of the way Americans think and believe and practice. We see in many countries that tyranny is stopped by a military revolution. And we're not in favor of military dictatorships. We're just pointing out because the ethos of normality, of nature, and of sanity is found in the common man when he's in the military, and those men are raised to positions of authority in a normal military. Then the military, when they see things like January 6th take place, they step in and say, "No, wait a moment here. That's not the Constitution. That's not the way it's going to work. You're all under arrest. Trump is the president, and or we're going to have a new election." So, and that causes peace. That establishes a just order that is not unjust, even if they have no constitutional direct obligation, statutory to intervene. They should have intervened. But what has the American military leadership shown us? They're complete sissy layovers. They didn't do a blessed thing. They just rolled right over.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about for this how what type of men are chosen for officers.
Yeah, to show you how bad it is in the military, I knew a sergeant major of the highest rank that you could be as a sergeant major, and he served at the highest levels in the Pentagon. I won't say exactly where because I don't want him to get bumped off for what he told me. But he said to me, "Never trust an officer in the U.S. Armed Forces. Because if their commanding officer told them to stab their own mother in the back, they would do it." And I said, "You can't be serious." I mean, you can't be serious. He says, "It's not because it's the American military, and it's not because they are officers. It's because the American military under Masonic control has a policy to give a psychological profile exam to officer candidates. And if you don't pass that exam as a complete psychopath willing to serve the Masonic Lodge, you are never allowed to become an officer. And that's why you shouldn't trust them with anything." And this was a sergeant major who had spent his whole life in the Army and got all the way up to the Pentagon.
Mm.
So what does that say? That should send off alarm bells, okay? And this should also explain to us why Catholic president got assassinated and his brother got assassinated when running for the presidency right after him.
Yeah.
Because our country is not run by Americans. It's run by evil, deeply twisted, anti-Christic, Masonic trash. And they have taken control of our banks, the deep state, the CIA, the FBI, both political parties, our economy, our military industrial establishment, and most of our state governments.
Mm.
And they will have power until a Christian party wrests that power from them. or
Yeah.
there is a armed revolution. Okay. And that's the only way they're going to lose that power. They're not going to convert. These people are too darn black. They're just black. And I don't mean in the color of their skin. I mean in the spirituality of their souls. Black as hell. Okay.
Yeah. When Robert Kennedy Jr. was doing his video on YouTube with some other news outlet, Valuetainment, I think the channel is called. He talked about how his his uncle was assassinated and how his father was also assassinated. And we all think we know this. We all think, oh, it was just some loser Oswald who did the shooting, or is Sirhan who did the shooting of Bobby Kennedy. But no, there is a whole lot to that story we do not know of because they do not want to tell it. It was just him wanting to get the facts, wanting to get justice for his uncle and father. We told it. Oswald was an agent of the CIA. Then he defected to Soviet Union.
Under orders from the CIA.
Mm-hmm. They had his file opened up with a trigger on it, so whenever the Soviet Union wanted to know about him, all they had to do was pick up the phone. And someone was already at the desk with his file open 24/7. All they had to do was pick up the phone and say, well, we need to know more about this Oswald guy. And they tell it. And Oswald married the daughter of a KGB colonel. Then when it was time for him to come back to America, the CIA gave him money, told him where to go. He brought his Soviet Union wife and child to Texas, and his handlers there were also part of the ones who wanted to topple the Castro regime, met with him in Dallas. And it is this unit of the CIA that shot and killed JFK. Now on the video, yeah.
I said it's interesting what he said about the assassination of his own father by Sirhan. It wasn't by his Sirhan Sanharol, who was in front of him. It was by a security guard that he helped get a job in the hotel, who shot him point blank. I mean, gun pressing flesh in the back, in the neck, and in the head, and unloaded his revolver. And that was completely covered up by the authorities. And Robert Kennedy Jr. says he believes that's the case because 2 weeks before, a student at Southern California University asked him, if you become president, will you reopen the Warren Commission and reinvestigate the assassination of your brother? And he said, yes. And Robert Kennedy Jr. believes he was assassinated for that. So why have these assassinations been covered up? Now, as a Catholic, use some common sense. People are telling you to vote for the Republican Party, but the Republican Party covered up those assassinations, or the Democratic Party, or they both covered them up. So why is it that the Catholic president and the Catholic presidential candidate both get assassinated, and their assassinations are covered up, and you still think you should vote for the Democrat and Republican parties? And if a Catholic tells you to vote for them, he must be either utterly clueless, totally insane, or he is himself a Freemason and a deep state operative, or he's just totally psychologically controlled because he's an idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, we should have some spunk as Catholics. We should have some loyal and say, we're not going to take it anymore. We're not going to take any more of this gay marriage, this child abuse, this vaccine people to death, this scamdemic, this manipulations of the dollar, wiping out our savings, this devastating national debt, these foreign wars that do nothing present the Masonic Lodge, these satanic cults, these manipulations of the stock market, the screwing of the American worker and of the American soldier. We're not going to take it anymore with these games and these campaigns, the crooked ballot harvestings and the ballot countings and the crooked, completely crooked courts all the way up to the Supreme Court. We have to say we're not going to take it anymore. If you vote for the system that created this, you're not voting for your liberty.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just mind-boggling how brainwashed, hypnotized these Catholics are. Once Trump spoke last Sunday at CPAC, he hypnotized them again. And they're all screaming, chanting, Trump 2024, or Trump should run for the House or Senate, Trump 2021, or whatever it is. Or it's just, these folks need to unplug from the lies of the Republican and Democrat parties. They are not two different parties. If you've read Sutton, they are the same. What is it? Hegelian, Hegel, that term that Sutton used.
I don't recall off the top of my head, but they're both run by the Skull and Bones Lodge banks in New York. They're both funded from that. And I mean, use your brain, folks. This guy won the election by overwhelming numbers. All the evidence showed he won the election, and then he surrendered without a fight.
Mm-hmm.
While he was still president, he could have declared martial law and said, look a moment, there's not going to be any installation of a new president until the states investigate the ballot counts and they determine for themselves who won. Then we'll have the electoral college count and vote, and then I'll accept the outcome, but not before. And he could have done that, but he didn't do that.
Yeah.
So you should vote for this guy again? He played you. He totally played you. Because anyone who's going to surrender when he wins is either insane or a nut. But if you follow him, you're following him to your destruction.
Then we have, I don't know how many miles of wall we have, but it's unfinished. We have a few hundred thousands of illegal aliens from Latin America coming in to take over this country, get the free stuff. But it's just the same old status quo of the two parties and the big government, CIA, Skull and Bones, pushing this invasion. Because it is totally interesting to learn about the CIA and how what we see going on at the border, and people are asking, how the heck did you get all these fresh, clean, pro-Biden t-shirts for a photo op? And you have to ask that question, but it should be so obvious if you ever did any investigation into what is going on. And again, from Operation Gladio book, New CIA Amigos. In 1980, the agency deployed Dewey Claridge, its top agent to Latin America, to establish ties with the Honduran drug lord Juan Mata Ballesteros, who operated the airline Setco. Setco agreed to transport narcotics to gangs north of the border and arms to a warehouse in Honduras that was operated by CIA operative Oliver North and Richard Secord. The weapons were purchased by the agency's cut of the deal, which in one transaction amounted to $14 million. The CIA also made business arrangements with other drug lords, including Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, the godfather of the Mexican drug business, whose ranch became a training ground for right-wing guerrilla armies, and Miguel Nazar Herrero, the leader of the Guadalajara cartel, Mexico's most powerful narcotics network. By 1990, more than 75% of all cocaine entering the United States came through Mexico. Mexico also became a leading source of heroin, marijuana, methamphetamines. The business was generating $50 billion a year. The CIA had found a source of funding to augment its ongoing heroin trade with the Turkish Babas and the Sicilian Mafia. The new alliance meant the agency could launch operations even more ambitious than Gladio. So to get those shirts, to bring all those people up, I believe, is that new thing bigger and worse than Gladio.
Yeah. We've shown in programs over at Order Militaris Radio TV from Sutton's books that the CIA is skull and bones. They are a criminal organization. They are the right hand or iron arm of the Masonic Lodge. And no government that allows them to exist and doesn't have them all arrested and most of them shot for their horrible crimes against humanity, their crimes against American youth, their complete fraud and killings of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people overseas, just the CIA, is not honest. It's just a complete fraud. And you got to stop listening to these fraudulent idiot talking heads that are telling you to vote Republican, or the worst communist bishops who are telling you to vote Democrat. These people are your traitors. These people are deep state. And we already talked about how many so of them trace their personal histories back to this deep. Michael Matt went to Christendom College, founded by CIA, Skull and Bones. Skojek was in bankruptcy, and a friend in Washington got him a job, and all of a sudden he was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal. Amazing that. And he was concerned people were separating from Bergoglio. And then you have Taylor Marshall. Well, he no sooner was ordained Anglican priest, he became a Catholic, worked for the Diocese of Washington, D.C., and then went down to Fisher College, worked there for a year, demanded $100,000 in severance to help them go bankrupt, and then got a plush position with EWTN. And but Bergoglio's the Pope, he insists. Well, these people all have deep contacts with the whole Masonic institutions in the United States. That's why they will never tell you to vote Catholic Party for America. And that's why politically you should consider them fakes. But they are enemies of Christ the King. These are not allies of Christ the King. Because allies of Christ the King years ago would have started a Catholic political party, and they never have ever done that. And you know the argument you hear, and it really enrages me as a monk, we would never win. You mean to say that 120 million Christians with Jesus Christ can't win because the Masonic Lodge with a few million and Satan is stronger? Is that what you're saying? That's blasphemy. And that is a lack of faith and hope in God. And those are mortal sins. And they're not remote mortal sins. They're direct mortal sins, because as soon as you say that word, those words, you are a blasphemer against God and the Holy Spirit.
Yep. So what the CIA is doing in Latin America, and also pushing illegal immigrations to come into this country to ruin it even more. Who does it truly really hurt? The good immigrants who came here the right way, did it the right way. We got their mom and pop shops in their Latin American, their Hispanic neighborhoods, their African American neighborhoods. It is those places, it is those people that these illegal immigrants will hurt. It will take away their jobs. It will push even more crime, even more drugs into those communities. It will also hurt their education of their children, because now the teachers wouldn't know what to do with them because they don't know what their education levels are, and also they don't speak the language to know what the heck is being taught. And so it ruins the working people there. It ruins the families. It ruins education, and it also ruins the healthcare that these illegals get freely, and everyone else has to get whatever is offered and pay for it.
And most Americans now don't have health care because it's been completely ruined. If you don't know much about the history of the United States, you need to understand that when the immigrants came legally from Europe in the beginning in 1860s up to like 1920, and my family is among that crowd, they brought the Catholic faith with them. They brought good Christian values. They transformed the cities of the East. And if they had voted for a Catholic party, this country would be entirely different. But they were recruited into the Democrat or Republican parties, and they were neutralized.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what's happening with Latin American immigration: is they're having their neighborhoods destroyed by all these problems you listed so well, AJ, so that their entire Christian Catholic culture is destroyed, and they're integrated into the new Masonic godless system of the United States. And this is willed, planned, programmed, and it's intentional. And this is what you get when you vote Democrat or when you vote Republican. But you wouldn't get this if you voted Catholic Party for it.
Yeah. And the policy towards Latin America would be this: we would end any and all, I don't know what we call it, missions of the CIA and all those other organizations from ever setting foot in Latin America. If they need help rebuilding what the CIA destroyed, restoring Christianity back into not just any old Christianity, but restoring the Catholic faith back into Latin America, that we would help with.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, well, we've mentioned this before, the CIA needs to be totally uprooted and destroyed, and everyone behind it needs to be put in bars, and many of them probably need to be shot and get capital punishment because they're criminals against humanity. The U.S. Army needs to be totally reformed. It needs to become like a host of crusaders. And American foreign policy has to completely change and become the reign of Jesus Christ and the promotion of Christendom. And that should be the only foreign policy of the United States, because the United States is a Christian country. And it should totally work to destroy and undermine the globalists and the Freemasons and all kinds of things like Islamic terrorism around the world. And I will just not mention and not forget Marxism and communism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what America should be, and will never be that unless you vote Catholic Party for America, because no other party wants them. See, a godless party has no one to be loyal to except Satan, who is godless.
Mm-hmm.
But the Catholic Party knows its king, its Lord, and its master, and he has its grace and his banner to carry forward. So it will be a lot easier for us to win than for them. Mm-hmm. They have to do it by lies, manipulations, and all kinds of intrigue. We just have to say, I'm voting Catholic Party America.
Yep. I mean, U.S. military is so full of lies, debauchery. I could list a few, but I don't want to do that. But it's got, I mean, the soldiers, especially the special forces soldiers who are in or come out, they are so childless. Like they act like so childless. They laugh at anything debauchery. They have a sick sense of humor. That anything dirty is good or laughable, or that anything twisted is good or laughable. All that debauchery that is currently in the U.S. military needs to be removed.
Yeah. How many good soldiers saw pedophilia on U.S. bases in Afghanistan, blew the whistle on it, and then were court-martialed?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but this is what the Masonic Lodge began with a few very twisted, evil people. They infiltrated other organizations, got control of them, and then spread their evil, twisted view of the world into them, and then used them to control others. And this is what's been going on the last 200 years. And if we don't put a stop to it, it's going to be the end of humanity as we know it. And the scamdemic is the flowering of all of that. And that would have never happened if we had a Catholic party in every country.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not just a political option. This is a political necessity. And encourage all the members of the Catholic Party of America to get deadly serious about this. You will have no liberty unless you really start organizing the Catholic Party for America. And you can invite any devout Christian that is also wants this kind of liberty from this evil to be a member. And you need, though, to do something about it. You can't just say, I signed up, I'm Catholic Party for America, and the whole world, all the problems of the world are going to end now, because handicapped AJ in his home is going to do everything for the party. I don't have to do anything. He can do it all from his desk. Where are you guys? You've got to wake up, you know?
I mean, are you all agents of the CIA, DHS, NSA? All of you alphabet soup people are most of you who signed up, are you of those alphabet soup places?
Yeah, because they don't do anything to recruit, yeah. And they don't want to show their face on a video camera. The one sign of a government agent, he will never get on a live camera view, because you can record that and then he could be identified and they'll never blow the cover. And I know there's a lot of Catholic Party folks a member, and none of them have yet to willing to even come and show their face. Come on, guys. Are you cowards? Now, otherwise, we just have to assume you are, but or that you're government agents. But we need Catholics who are going to be fighters, and you can't be afraid to show your face. AJ and I, we show our face all the time.
Yeah.
We care about it. We care if we get strange knocks on the door, or if our email starts arriving 5 minutes late because they're reading all our emails.
Nah.
Doesn't, it's water off our backs, because we're not committing a crime. We're doing something honest.
Yeah.
And that's what enrages them, because they're completely corrupt. And you've got to be a fighter too. If you want your country, you've got to fight for your country. And stop with all the slogans like, I'm patriotic, I'm conservative, I'm Christian. If you don't fight for your country, for Jesus Christ, you're just a complete hypocrite. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And American will never be saved by hypocrites. That's why you can't vote for Trump. He's a hypocrite first class. Or for any of these others. I think Biden is the only one who excels Trump in hypocrisy, but they're all of them.
Yeah.
So we need an honest party, a party that represents American values.
Yep. Before we go, I'd like to touch on the healthcare deal, because, well, I'm here because of bad healthcare. Healthcare, as Robert Kennedy Jr. said, should not injure, maim, or kill someone. It should be totally tested until it's totally 100% safe to use. You there?
Yeah, I'm there. Just happened to get a phone call from someone I never get a phone call from.
And he said, do what we used to do, test it on animals to make sure it was safe for humans. I was like, yeah. Don't let the humans be the guinea pigs. Yeah. And if you're a guy, you go in for a blood test and your doctor does, you need to come back into the office because I have something to tell you. Your testosterone is super, super dangerously low. We have to bump it up to make you better. Do not say yes, or you'll end up where I am.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, AJ is a victim of hormone therapy malpractice in a large thing. And vaccine. Aren't you a victim of the vaccines? Mm-hmm. You had great health until they started giving you How many vaccines did they give you?
What was that? I forgot the number of how many Kennedy said in the 89 to 90s that had to go in, like 16 or 17 of them, I think. Yeah. So I was active, cheerful. I was not afraid to talk, not afraid to sing in public. And once I started getting those vaccines, my motor skills went down. My ability to be myself went down.
Did you lose speech control?
Yeah. It was kind of embarrassing because he's like, I used to sing in front of people before this. Now I can't. And then I had to go to special education in grade school to just literally work on redeveloping the motor skills. And after watching that 2-hour video of Robert Kennedy Jr., I can see why I spent a good number of years in special education to redo those motor skills that I lost. I still sometimes have trouble with it.
So for all you Catholics out there and Americans and Christians, if you want a party that's always going to be against Big Pharma, the deep state, and the complete corruption of America, what better than one founded by a descendant of the Adams and the Washingtons, who's a victim of their system? If you want authentic, if you want honest, if you want independent, here you go. And AJ, having suffered everything you suffered, I'm in admiration, because I have to say that I grew up in an age when you only had to take the 3 vaccines: rubella, mumps, measles, and so my health wasn't ruined by it, and I haven't suffered any of those problems. I won't say thank God, because suffering can sometimes make a man test his mettle and make him a better person. But all of you out there, you probably have children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews who are suffered similar things to AJ from vaccines. Are you going to keep voting the parties that gave them immunity?
Mm.
Are you keep going to voting the parties that put in judges that don't let the victims get justice?
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. There's a lot of people telling you should vote Republican because you'll waste your vote in a third party. That is a complete, absolute lie. You have wasted your vote in the Masonic, Democrat, and Republican parties. It's been a complete waste. It's not only a waste, it has made the country worse. It has destroyed members of your family, has destroyed your jobs, it has destroyed veterans, you know, and it's destroyed hundreds of millions of people around the world.
Yep.
So it's not a waste of your vote, Catholic Party America. It's the only way to save your vote.
Mm-hmm. And before we go, I know we're reaching almost an hour, but I also support what Robert Kennedy Jr. is doing with trying to get foods healthy again. You know, get all that crap out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Natural, common sense food, not fake food. Wonder Bread has to go. Mm-hmm. AJ, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be with you on this program for Catholic Party America, how America needs true, honest American politics, and how Catholic Party for America is the solution. Thank you so much.
Yep. This is Catholic Party for America signing off. God bless America. God save the Republic.
God bless America. God save the Republic.